This castle was built almost 1,000 years ago by the father of King Arthur, a man who is said to have lived centuries before this place was even here. In fact, most experts think that much like his famous son, he probably never existed at all. So why is this Grade 1 listed ruin said to have been his? Well, right now we're making our way over to Pendragon Castle. We're going to take a look at it up close and try and figure out where all these stories came from. Let's go and check it out. Now we are currently in the county of Cumbria, up in the north of England, making our way along the River Eden towards Pendragon Castle. We're very close to the southeastern border of Cumbria, but I mean, this place looks amazing. We've been blessed with some nice weather today, but what an incredible landscape. And we're making our way towards Pendragon Castle, said to have been built by Uther Pendragon, father of the legend King Arthur. Now, legends aside, that might be the coolest name for a castle or anything I've ever come across, Pendragon. I'm seriously considering, in fact, changing my name to Jack Pendragon. It's kind of got a ring to it. But before we get into Uther's story, we need to know a little bit about his son, the legendary King Arthur. Now, some of you may be experts on the subject. You might have already done a deep dive down the rabbit hole that is Arthurian legend. Or you may just recognize the name from the endless pop culture references in films, TV shows, books, you name it. Or it may just not mean much at all. Not yet, at least. And to be honest, the timeline and the history of this whole tale is kind of confusing. It's a bit weird from my perspective, very messy. Even experts still disagree on certain elements of this, but from the sounds of it, the earliest trace we can find of this Arthur goes back to sometime around the 800s, possibly a century either side. It's not quite known, where he was mentioned in some old Welsh texts. This was before he was seemingly referenced as a king, and wouldn't really resemble who most of us think of when we hear the name King Arthur. And what happens after that is basically a series of adaptations, could you call them? One of the most significant of which was in the 1100s, in a book whose English title was The History of the Kings of Britain. Now, this book contains the Arthur most people would recognise. And going by the title, it sounds like a straight-edge historical document, but it's not, it's really not. It's described by some as pseudo-history, and some people say it just contains flat-out lies. And from what I can tell, it was, yeah, semi-historical text, which used limited parts of known history from the time, combined them with legend and mythology, and then for any remaining blanks, just took a huge amount of creative freedom to fill in the rest of the story, basically. And this seems to be the theme for how this now pretty mammoth Arthurian legend started to take shape. There are French poets, for example, who are said to have essentially added to this story. And so over time, we end up with a tale of this incredible figure, strong protector, warrior, and some pretty iconic story elements. The Round Table, the legendary sword Excalibur, Camelot, and an eventual love triangle. Everything you need for a great story, pretty much. I think we're about to pass through a private farm. It is a footpath, but I may need to cut a bit of the footage out, if so. Okay, we had a detour straight through a working farm there. You do quite often get footpaths in England that go through private land and farmland, but not so often straight through the middle. Anyway, back to King Arthur. Now, looking back for us, it's easy to say, well, it's easy for experts to say, that he probably wasn't a real person. But at the time, the situation was different. He was believed to exist, and he's described at times as being kind of almost a political figure, or used politically, let's say. We've got a period of time leading up to the late 1100s, whereby Arthurian legend had been growing and strengthening. And he's described as a kind of figure of hope, particularly, at least to those in the text referred to as Welsh rebellions. And without diving too deeply into it, because, well, you've probably seen the size of some of the books on these subjects, when rumours were still flying around that Arthur, this beacon of hope, was alive, sounds like there was an incentive for some in England to prove otherwise. And what would you know? conveniently, Arthur's grave gets discovered at Glastonbury Abbey. Real legitimate proof that he's dead. I mean, not really, of course, looking back. But it was a narrative that served its purpose, not just politically, but for the church as well. Throwing a bit of shade at Glastonbury Abbey here, I guess, but I mean, it was convenient for the Abbey as well, who subsequently found it much easier to obtain some much needed money. And this is why I describe it as a messy timeline. I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but that's what it's like to my brain. We've got this Welsh figure originating long, long ago from texts there, whose story is gradually fleshed out by different people, with new details being added. At some point it's claimed that King Arthur is English, which is especially weird, because it's not like the English to take something, steal something, and present it as their own. And they certainly would never do anything to hinder Wales or the Welsh people. What are you going to tell me next? That the English once tried to stamp out the Welsh language? It's preposterous. But either way, it's a subject that still has many people discussing the specifics and the details to this day. And that brings us to Pendragon Castle, which we're heading to right now. Now, one of these plot points that emerged throughout this timeline was the existence of King Arthur's father, a man named Uther Pendragon. And his legend is kind of weird as well. Oh, we're passing through a little hamlet or something. What an idyllic place to live. Back to Uther though. According to his story, he fell in love with a woman who was already married. And so with the help of his assistant, the wizard Merlin, he disguised himself to look like her husband. And they slept together. She became pregnant with King Arthur. So you see what I mean when I say it's kind of a weird story. Probably not worth overthinking it. And it's Pendragon Castle, where we're heading to, that was said to have been built. What kind of plane is that? Wow. There is an area not too far from here that's used for RAF training. But I didn't think it was that close. That's crazy. Okay, train of thought gone. Also the sun's out, so I'm having to fight the urge a lot of English blokes face when there's the slightest amount of sunlight hitting the skin to hunt out the nearest beer garden. I'm going to resist that though. But back to the castle, which was said to have been built by Uther. And as you can probably imagine, some of the details here don't quite make sense. We are in sort of best guess territory with some of these dates, but Pendragon Castle isn't believed to have been there up until sometime in the 1100s. And this is a great many years after Arthur or his dad would have ever walked the plains of the earth. So straight away, something's not right. The castle itself passed through a number of owners in its lifetime. It was attacked on a couple of occasions by the Scots, fell into disrepair, was repaired, and then most recently in 1962 was sold at auction. Now, how much do you think it sold for? I'm going to give you a minute or two to think of your guess, and then I'll let you know. But the year that we're most interested in is 1309, because at this time Pendragon Castle was owned by the Clifford family, and they were granted permission to change the name from Mallerstang Castle to Pendragon Castle. Now Mallerstang, I believe, is the name of the valley that we're in right now. And this story reminded me a little bit of the vast network of follies we've got around the country. These creatively designed and named buildings, forts, replicas, that were often constructed on private land to kind of attribute fake legend and prestige to them. And from the sounds of it, that's what happened here at Pendragon Castle. the owners changed the name to attach it to all of this Arthurian legend. And I guess we have to say that it worked, because, well, it's 2026 and I might not be here talking about it if it wasn't called Pendragon Castle. And speaking of, we should see it emerging in the distance over the brow of this next hill. Well, there's the castle. Found that, but where's the bridge? There we go. Here we go, Pendragon Castle. The price, by the way, for anybody wondering, 1962, it sold at auction for 525 British pounds. Now that seems like a really good deal to me. I don't know if there's a catch, but it seems cheap. And this is what's left of it. We can't go inside the ruins, unfortunately. I'm sure that doesn't stop some people. Now the name Pendragon actually stems from Wales and Welsh as well. Much like the story of King Arthur, there are two threads to the name. The real one, let's call it, and the more fictional one. And in terms of its Welsh origins, it's said to be in two parts. Pen, meaning head or top, and dragon, meaning warriors. This is kind of unusual. I guess this wall was about to collapse. Yeah, so Pendragon together, leader of warriors. Which on second thought is a name I probably haven't earned myself, so maybe I'll stick to my current name. It's pretty awesome though, pretty atmospheric. These days it is still on private land, but the landowners very kindly allow people to come in and visit, as long as you're obviously considerate, not climbing over the ruins and, you know, doing anything crazy. And aside from that, there's not a ton more that I can tell you about it. There is obviously a more detailed history of this castle and of Uther Pendragon and King Arthur, but the full-on history, ooh, I thought it was a cellar, but it's not. The full-on history is quite complex. And there'll be historians out there who can give you the deep dive much better than I would be able to. Now, if you want to visit Pendragon Castle yourself, you can do. It's actually surprisingly accessible. You can park right outside on the other side of this road here and literally walk straight in if you wish. If you want a longer trip, there are plenty of footpaths around here. There's something called the Pennine Journey, which is 247 miles long. You don't have to do all of it, but we walked along some of it as we came along the side of the River Eden here. So there are plenty of different ways to come and visit. I'll be putting my OS Maps route from today in the members section very soon. And aside from that, I just want to say thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's adventure. If you know more about the Arthurian legend and Uther Pendragon that you want to throw into the mix, or any questions, let us know in the comments as always. Huge thank you to everyone who's watched this video and helps to finance these trips, and massive thank you to all the members and donators who fund a lot of what goes on behind the scenes, preparing, traveling to, and putting all these videos together. So thank you so much, and fingers crossed, I'll see you next time.